Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cosmic Owl Astrology. I am Louise Edington, your wisdom weaver and cyberpunk priestess to the stars, according to Steve Judd. Before I dive in, don't forget to subscribe, leave me a comment, leave me a thumbs up, please, please, please. All helps, get the videos more visible. We're going to be looking at the month ahead, but also quick shout out about my book series in astrology. It's kind of stuck at 30 reviews, which is really weird because I know I've sold a lot more books. So if you don't have the book already, it's got great reviews. It's available on Amazon everywhere and all other major booksellers. The reviews have all been stellar so far. But if you have the book already, I would really love it if you could make the time to leave me a review on Amazon. If you bought it elsewhere, you can actually review the book under the Kindle section. Because, yep, I'm still at 30 reviews. That's just like wild. Let me see, where is it? Because it's going down the rankings. No, it's okay. It's doing really well. But I have to keep plugging it, and reviews really help. So October, wow, already, and it's actually recording this on September the 30th. And so the heavens have opened. We haven't had any significant rain here in Utah for most of this year, or the summer at least. And it's actually bucketing it down right now. So it's feeling really fallish already. And of course, we're entering the witching season. So October's coming. Major aspects we'll be looking at as we go through the big aspects of the month are that Neptune will move back into Pisces temporarily, and Pluto is stationing direct. But we have other things too. We have Pallas Athena stationing direct. We have asteroid Lilith stationing direct, amongst other things that we will look at. And I did pull 3 cards for the month ahead. And I do think this month could feel a little bit challenging because of these aspects. It's more really because it feels like things are falling away. And I think I called one of my last videos beginning of the end. And really we are entering those end times. Things are falling away, things are breaking up, things are breaking apart, and that's not easy for everybody. And so, I do still see potential for amazing expansion of consciousness. And it's kind of, if it is to be, it's up to us as humans, but the potential is there. So the cards I see really as a little bit more of a caution. So anyway, I'll show you the cards. Strength, the 4, and 5 of discs, and I will go through them all full at the end. So let's dive in to the month ahead with the usual kind of overview of where we're at the start of the month. So you can see we have a lot of retrogrades still. As we begin the month, Pluto is still retrograde, Pallas Athena is still retrograde, Chariclo is still retrograde, asteroid Lilith is, Centaur Nessus, Saturn, Neptune, Ceres, Eris and Chiron, and Uranus and Sedna, all retrograde. The other thing to note is that the personal planets, Mercury is moving fast. Mercury will move right through Scorpio, will finish in Libra and move right through Scorpio in October, and then start to slow down at the end of the month, because once Mercury moves into Sagittarius, we will approach the last Mercury retrograde of the year in the sign of Sagittarius. They've all been in fire signs this year. If you have not noticed that, it feels like the world's on fire in so many ways. And so, but Mercury's moving fast still. Venus is also moving fast, and well, I'll talk about her as the way through. What else should I mention? I think Mars is moving fast now as well. So the more personal planets, other than Ceres, which is a personal planet, are moving fast and direct. Moon and Sun always move direct from our perspective, of course. The other thing to mention is we start the month with the moon in Capricorn. The nodes are still at 18 degrees, so we still have not left the eclipse. I hate the word period. Let's call it period. And Pluto, I already mentioned that, so the moon is out of bounds in Capricorn, but the moon's always out of bounds when it's going through Capricorn and the surrounding signs. Depends how far into those other signs it goes. Then I mentioned that Pluto will station direct, and Pluto is, of course, also out of bounds. Now, Pluto starts the month at 23 degrees 32 minutes south declination, and that's the most out of bounds Pluto will get. But Pluto spends the whole of October out of bounds. Now, I have talked about it before, but Rosie Flynn in her book, in her book Persephone's Revolution. I've not had a chance to read all the history. It's such a well-researched book. But she does say that periods where Pluto is out of bounds south are usually great awakenings and good or better times for humanity. That's the crux of her argument. And I had something else to say. Pluto will be going out of bounds south just for a couple of months or so every year until 2030. Okay, so the last times Pluto was out of bounds to the south was 1783 to 1784, was the Treaty of Paris and the French Revolution. Before that, 15, I don't know if I'm reading this right anyway, so, oh yeah, it was 1534 onwards a little bit, but around that period. Henry VIII broke with Rome. Ivan the Terrible assumed power at 3 years old. It was the zenith of power of the Ottoman Empire. The Incas were conquered. Didn't know quite what's so good about that, but they were more peaceful times, I think she said. The Jesuit order was founded the last time Pluto was out of bounds south in the 16th century. Before that, in the end of the 13th century, Marco Polo left China and travelled the Silk Road. The Crusades came to an end. Switzerland was founded and the Ottoman Empire was founded. I could keep going back, but I've still got to read a lot of this book. But really, basically, she said people who were declared emperor, king, queen, or in some other way ruler of an empire, while Pluto was at the peak of its journey in extreme declination north. Revolutions and independence declared when Pluto was at the south. That doesn't make sense, but you get the idea. And so the last time Pluto was out of bounds to the south, I shouldn't have closed that page. I think it's worth knowing because I know people are really worried about the future. Okay, was 1944 to 1945. The US dropped the atomic bombs. It was the end of World War II. This was but the UN was founded, the World Bank was founded, Chinese Civil War came to full-out war. Chairman Mao came into power, and it was beginning of the Iron Curtain of communism, increasing the power of Stalin. I think I'm reading her tables right. Yeah. So you can kind of get the vibe without me going through the whole book, because you can find interviews with Rosie Flynn on YouTube. But she kind of said, authoritarianism and such was on the rise with Pluto out of bounds to the north, and revolution and the rising of the people was associated with out of bounds to the south. And without going through the whole book, that bears out. So I kind of wanted to add to this Pluto out of bounds to right now. Now, I think Pluto reaches its maximum out of bounds in 2027 and then starts getting less out of bounds in the subsequent years till 2030. And then after that does not go out of bounds north or south for thousands of years. This is quite another reason why we are in absolutely astounding times. Okay. So that's kind of the overview. So let's start with October the 1st. Okay. So the aspects that will happen on October the 1st is that Juno over here, Juno will move, sacred contracts, asteroid, will move into Sagittarius. Juno did dip back into Sagittarius early this year, but then went retrograde back into Scorpio, where she shared a journey with Vesta, Hecate, and Black Moon Lilith back and forth. The four kind of really divine goddess energy, if you want to call it that, divine feminine, all those things. But anyway, Juno is our sacred contracts with each other. She's kind of like the yin yang symbol in many ways, and she is moving into Sagittarius, the sign of truth and justice. Okay, then the sun over here in Libra, we're still in Libra season, will square off to Centaur Pholus. Which is take the lid off it. I kind of see it as cause and effect. Pandora's box opens, one thing flies out, and then many things afterwards. We kind of see the effect of past actions. We're seeing this over and over. So the sun square to Pholus is shining a big old light on that. Then at 3:51 p.m. on October the 1st, the moon will enter Aquarius for a couple of days. As usual, every time a planet or the moon changes signs, it runs the gamut of aspecting all of these slower moving, big change maker agents. So Uranus and Sedna in Gemini, Neptune and Saturn in Aries. Saturn and Neptune will move back into Aries, Pluto in Aquarius, and then Haumea over here in Scorpio. They're all right at the beginning of those signs. The last aspect for the day on October the 1st, major aspect, is that Mercury over here in Libra, in the sign of the scales and justice and fairness and equity. I've seen the word equity mentioned so many times this week with Mercury in Libra, by the way. And Mercury in the sign of Libra will square off to Jupiter in Cancer at that master builder number 22 degrees. And Mercury is moving away, by the way. And, you know, this is really kind of like, we feel like our basis of safety and security is under threat, and Mercury is going to speak out for justice, but also for more strategy. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. Okay, on to October the 2nd, very early, right after we move to October the 2nd, Eastern time, Mars in its own sign of Scorpio, remember, moving fast. This is a big aspect. Will square off to Pallas Athena. Pallas Athena is wise justice. She is strategy. She is creative intelligence. But why is this such a big aspect? Okay, so, I'm not going to read what that said, but you can see the moon joins this party as well, right? So, you know, this Pallas Athena is about to station direct. So she is at a standstill right now. She is at her station direct degree, and this is the south node of the USA. Now, 6 degrees Aquarius is also a hot degree. My friend and client Dawn Hild and I are recording a video on Thursday going back over something we covered earlier or last year about the 6-degree mark. We did a video called Fools and Lovers about the 0 Aquarius degree and the 6-degree Aquarius degree. But we've got a lot more to say about it than we did in that one. We focused more on the 0-degree mark then. But this is a huge degree for so many reasons. It's the south node of the USA. It's where Pluto was when it was discovered in 1781, and various other things. And Pallas Athena is justice. If you think about the energy of Pallas Athena, she could be quite brutal, but she would freeze her enemies out. And she would use the head of Medusa to kind of deflect their gaze so that she could strike and so on. She was kind of quite vengeful in many ways, but she's also associated with strategy. That's what I said I would come back to. So Mars is squaring off. Mars is powerful in Scorpio because Mars is the traditional guide for that sign. I think of it as psychic surgery. Mars is the faster moving energy moving towards Pallas Athena. It's a closing square in a long cycle, which I'm not going to look back at this point. But Mars is action, will, and drive. I've, again, paying attention to what's going on in the world, I've heard the word strategy mentioned so many times in relation to quite a lot of things, like what the Democrats should do in the US regarding the government shutdown, but also at a local level about the futility of all these protests all the time sometimes, and all this activism. It just really has not got people very far in many ways in this current age. I'm not saying it didn't do anything back in the 60s, but I do have a theory about what's happening now being a backlash to the gains that were made in the 60s. So anyway, just think of that strategic action coming from the root by the people. Okay, that's how I see that square. The Sun over here in Libra will then oppose Ceres. Ceres is at the closest point to Earth in her retrograde. She just passed the degree Venus stationed retrograde at back earlier this year, and she is going to station direct at 2 Aries, which is where Venus, the current Venus star point, was 2 Aries. We'll talk about that later when she stations direct. But if you think about this, looking directly at Ceres, where are you meeting your own needs so that you are more able to meet the needs of others? Okay, Libra, others, Ceres, your part in Aries. You could say way more, but I'm not going to. And then at 9:22 p.m., Neptune and Juno actually form a fire trine before Neptune moves back into Aries. We are really starting to see how our sacred contracts with each other are not met, and with the earth, for heaven's sake, and with everything, with all that is, as we move into this realm where we realize we live in this very interconnected quantum realm, whatever you want to call it, where things are really we're realizing that it's how we respond and work to all the energies that is really part of what we are learning at the moment. Now, I just watched an amazing workshop with astrologer Rick Levine a couple of weekends ago, and he said couple of quotes I wanted to read. Metaphysical becomes physical through sacred geometry, which is really all these aspects, planets. And the invisible is manifest geometrically. But that doesn't, so it's not real. He also said there is only the illusion of things. There are no things in the universe. The illusion of things are created by the intersection of very high frequency electromagnetic vibrations. Now, I wanted to quote him for these great quotes, but this indicates to me the trajectory I've been on with my work. I've done law of attraction courses using astrology. I've done this and that. But the more I work in astrology and the more I tune into what's emerging and what we're becoming aware of, I realize that we do to a big degree, and this is not the victim blaming, that saying that you chose to be in a wheelchair or whatever, but in many ways we do choose our reality. We see it from this sacred geometry lens. So it makes sense to me that we have to start using different language about astrology and seeing it as a co-creative tool. Okay, so that Neptune trine, sorry, that's why I talked about Neptune trine Juno. Juno is in the sign of truth, belief, higher experience of what we call the divine, which you could now be said is actual quantum science itself and the discoveries they're making, and is in trine to Neptune, which represents faith in the sign of Aries, who our essence is, who we see ourselves as at essence. It's honestly quite mind-blowing, all of this, energy of what we're stepping into. I've heard it called, five-dimensional realms and interconnectedness. There's all many expressions trying to express what we are moving into. But to me, for the world of astrology as well, it makes sense that we must start to work with astrology in a different way. And we are starting to. I'm impatient. Okay, October the 3rd, we're going to move on. So on October the 3rd, you can see that the moon is still going through Aquarius, but on October the 3rd itself, the bigger aspects are that Mercury in Libra will oppose Eris and Chiron. Eris and Chiron are about to be conjunct as well. Chiron is the table shaker. Chiron is Eris is the table shaker. Sorry, Chiron is the wound where the light gets in, where we become aware of our own woundedness and do our own healing or create intimacy from the inside out to therefore help us heal others. Mercury, the messenger of the gods, the communicator, is now really kind of stepping into this and seeing this and going, oh my God, you're right. This is truth. This is what's really going on. So I have more to say on that, but for now, this is this for today. The last aspect on October the 3rd is that just after 10 p.m. Eastern, the moon will move into Pisces for a couple of days. Okay, and we're heading towards the full moon then. Okay. On to the 4th, a bigger day. So the 4th, we have Vesta over here, will trine Ceres. That's our focus, commitment, and devotion to really mastering how we do this transformation from the inside out, healing, whatever you want to call it. Focus and devote yourself to this inner flame, doing your own work before taking it out into the world. But on October the 4th, we have a couple of other bigger aspects. Venus will conjunct the South Node, still at 18 degrees, which was the degree right through the eclipses. described it as circling the drain, but I don't see that in a bad way. I see that as kind of things flushing away. Venus is some old values, but it's also some relationships, and it can also be to do about how we see how our values are being represented out in the world. Also, this might affect some certain people who are aspected by this, who have not a very great Venus, and some things are going to be flushing down the drain, in my opinion. Also on October the 4th, though, just before Venus hits the South Node, Pallas Athena over here stations direct at that South Node of the USA. Justice is coming. The people. Justice by the people, for the people, right? Then the last aspect for the day, if you remember, we just had the Sun squaring off to Pholus. Mars has just aspected, it's just squared off to the strategic asteroid, Pallas Athena. Now Mars aspects Pholus. We're seeing more cause and effect, but we're also seeing the cause and effect of our own actions. So I think there's definitely some inventory needed and time to start doing things differently with more strategy. October the 5th, Uranus and Juno will face off, as will Sedna, which is kind of our spiritual destiny. We're in this big destiny point in massive cycles, and this is kind of like, okay, you're being told something here. It's do or die time. I think it's a lot to do with climate change and a lot to do with how we treat each other. So, Juno, sacred contracts, break the pattern. Okay. Okay. On to the rest of October the 5th. There's only one more aspect after Venus conjuncts that South Node. Why were we on October the 5th already? Oh, because I moved it on for that. Uranus opposing Juno. Sorry about that. Venus will oppose Nessus. Remember, Nessus has been saying the buck stops here. We've had it with these abuses of power, with all these people that have abused their power, or where we've given our own power away and abused our own power over ourselves. All of those things. Another ongoing lesson in that, in our relationship area. But asteroid Lilith on October the 5th. So this is that talk to the hand asteroid, saying, she's like the rebellious teenager saying, stop. You can see it's putting my hand up here. Oh God, Zoom keeps doing these lovely things. I'll just leave it up. Asteroid Lilith is going to station direct at 6 p.m. Eastern. So that will mean that Pallas Athena is now direct, asteroid Lilith is now direct, Chariclo is going to go direct, Pluto is going to go direct. All of it in Aquarius, all of it in the sign of the plasma bearer, as I call it, all of it in the sign of hopes and wishes for the future, and the sign of the people in so many ways. I really think more and more people are just done. Now, I did post a post on my community posts profile on YouTube a few days ago, saying that even Robert Reich is seeing the tide turning. Remember, these things take a while to shake out, okay? Anyway, on to October the 6th. The moon will enter Aries early on the 6th and stay there for a couple of days. So we've got the moon into Aries, but then at 12:40 p.m., Mercury will enter Scorpio. We've got Mars and Mercury in Scorpio then, and still we've got Hecate and Haumea. This is like more secrets coming to light. Will those files be released? Release the files, release the files. And Ceres will square off to Pholus Remember, Pholus is the lid comes off. I feel, I'm not promising it's this week, but I feel that the files are going to come out. And there's another reason why, because on October the 6th as well, we actually have the full moon. So I'm actually going to put the full moon up. I will do a whole video for it, of course. But we have this full moon in Aries opposing the sun. And it's actually not making very many very strong aspects at all. And as I said, I will do a full moon video as always. But, you know, this is right in the middle of all these retrogrades as well, pointing at the sun now on its own in Libra. This is really because all these are going to shift one by one. This is really about taking that more strategic action. But the fact is the full moon has got both lights shining a big light on those other changes I talked about. Okay. All right, so I'm actually just going to move it forward an hour rather than trying it. So I move it into October the 7th. So October the 7th, Juno will oppose Sedna. I've kind of mentioned that one already. But here we have I don't mention Black Moon Lilith a lot in these bigger things because she moves back and forth so long, but she's been there kind of firing up our elemental self, saying, come on, we've got to be wholly and truly us, be vulnerable, be very authentic, kind of take a step up, release our inner kind of wild person, whatever you want to say, our core elemental self. But Pallas Athena is still at 6 degrees Aquarius and squaring off to Pallas Athena. This is part of the strategy. Also getting right into your root about what you're going to do about all of this. Now, a couple of aspects I wouldn't normally always mention is that Mercury now in Scorpio is going to quincunx Uranus and Sedna, pattern breaking, code breaker, destiny point, and so it's going to quincunx, which is an adjustment aspect. Mercury is adjusting to all the secrets and revelations that are coming out, so we don't carry on the patterns. But Mercury is also going to square off to Pluto, which is now only 6 days away from stationing direct. Potent, potent, potent. On to the 8th. October the 8th. Mercury will conjunct Haumea. Who remembers last month or last week as I record this, or this week actually, but we had the moon and Mars and Haumea all square together, square Pluto. Now Mercury comes in, and what information and what is being said that is coming out from the fallout of that Mars-Pluto square. That's a closing quarter. I talked about that in length. I did a whole video on it. Is now getting talked about. All we're seeing, all the information's coming out. The secrets are coming out. And it's regenerative because it's Haumea. Then the moon will move into the sign of Taurus for a couple of days. Venus over here is leaving that south node behind quite rapidly, is going to sextile Jupiter. This is kind of building on their big conjunction that they had. Conjunct dog star Ceres at 14 Cancer. Jupiter is slowing down now as well. Still says fast there, but Jupiter's heading towards a retrograde. But this is an opening aspect again. This is what are we doing? What right work are we doing? How are we doing our meaningful work in the world? Saturn on October the 8th, been quiet. still squaring the galactic center, 27 Pisces, will trine Hecate. The way forward is this flow and interconnectedness, and through allowing your emotions to flow. Emotions have been so denigrated, right, for so long. But anyway, that's not the major aspect. Big aspect is Chiron and Eris will be conjunct again. This is the second of 3 times. The table turner is going to say, use what you've learned by your core identity wound opening up. It's happening collectively as well, to shake the tables. How do we make that the healing? Okay. And briefly, Mercury will meet Black Moon Lilith late on October the 8th as well, bringing in speaking from that core elemental self, whether it's from pain, speaking about it, but not reacting from pain, speaking from it and saying, this is how we heal them. Okay, October the 9th. Black Moon Lilith comes back to Haumea again, not going to talk much about that. But Venus over here will actually quincunx Chiron and Eris while they're conjunct. Look at this. They're both at the same degree, but Venus will come up to 2515 and quincunx the two of these together. Actually, Chiron might have moved off that minute, but you know, this is Venus is kind of saying, how can we co-create what we've learned from this? How can we co-create and do meaningful work based on our very core values? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, on to October the 10th, because this is getting long. October the 10th, the moon will enter Gemini for a couple of days. We'll hit Uranus, we'll hit Sedna. And so, you know, that's, and we'll trine Pluto, will sextile Neptune, all the things. And of course, the moon in Gemini is very social, but also very communicative, and ideas come in, but also makes kind of takes all this information and starts to understand it. Okay, having a moon in Gemini can be really like, I'm always taking in all this information, but I'm always trying to file the pieces together. These aspects are going to be big, but they happen every month. So then later on October the 10th, the sun over here will make an unbroken flow trine aspect to space holder and cosmic doula Chariklo in Aquarius, who is about to station direct. And so this is an air, so lots of ideas flowing, all of those things, and kind of saying what strategies and how can we say no. How can we say, talk to the hand, we're not doing this anymore, but in a more strategic way, building on what I said earlier. Okay, on to October the 11th. Mercury over here still square to Pallas Athena pretty much. Yep, at the same time, will trine asteroid Hygeia. And so they are all speaking to each other, saying, you know, what we learn from the strategy of this can be moved to heal our basis of security and prevent this happening again. So, yeah, Mercury is exactly square Pallas Athena on the 11th, and these all speak to each other. And it's on the south node of the USA again, if you remember. Later that day, Venus, again, busy Venus, in these few days will oppose Saturn square the galactic center. And, in fact, let me go back a day. Yep. Late on October the 10th or early on October the 11th, depending where you are, the nodes move back off that 18-degree mark. But Venus opposing Saturn squares the galactic center at 27 degrees Sagittarius. Venus opposing Saturn is often a bit of a slap in the face, a bit of a reality check, but it's also getting clarity. And it's getting clarity about what needs to end or what boundaries you need to put up and in this meaningful work in the world. And a lot of this is based on this new truths and information that is coming in from the galactic center. That was activated a lot earlier in the year, but this is going to be like a big, okay, time to get to work, time to pull. I saw it this morning. Somebody said, time for everybody to grow a spine or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but that's pretty good expression for Venus Saturn aspects, because our relationships with everything and each other and ourselves do not work without buckling up and kind of saying, I've got to do the work. Okay. I'm not doing all those quincunxes. The sun over here will then make an unbroken flow to asteroid Lilith. It is still stationed direct, not, she's just started to move. This is more kind of future oriented strategies of how the people can come together. Funnily enough, I'm reminded of a chat with a friend of mine last night who is an activist, and he has been out there sweating his guts out, really just giving all he got to try and save people. And we talked about it last night, and he says, it's not working. It's not achieved a damn thing. And I said, no, we need to be more strategic. We're going to get together and talk about that. But I will say that he's not the only one, and I'm not the only one talking about that too. The moon into Cancer. On October the 12th, the moon will move into Cancer for a couple of days. Okay. And the sun will quincunx Nessus, making adjustments based on what we're seeing about the abuses of power, intergenerational everything, and the Mercury at the same time will aspect Pholus. So these centaurs, Nessus and Pholus, are really revealing the toxicity, the cause and effect of past actions, all of these kind of things. Okay, that's on October the 12th. And Venus will sextile Hecate. Where is she? Over here. Okay, so I'm not going to go into great detail about that. Too many aspects. October the 13th, big day. Pluto stations direct. I'll mention the other aspects briefly. Pluto stations direct, but also Venus will enter Libra. So Pluto stations direct at 10:52 p.m. So it's after. In fact, let me get to that. Why not? It's big because Pluto, slow moving. When these slow moving planets station direct or retrograde, it's like a big tide turning, churny kind of thing. It always impacts people most who have aspects to that degree or on that degree, but collectively these often are tide turning events, but especially right now with Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Sedna and Haumea all speaking to each other, and add Venus in. So Pluto stations direct. You can see it's late on the 13th. There's no big major aspects earlier in the day. Venus moved into her own home sign of Libra at 5:18 p.m. and she will then oppose Neptune exactly. But really, all of this is happening together. Venus opposes Neptune and Pluto is stationed direct. So we've got this, still got this kite going now. Look at this. Venus forms this kite as well, the air grand trine pointing to Neptune in Aries. And this is going to be the start of another big turning around. Now, what does Pluto do? Pluto really kind of digs up the shadow, reveals it, but also reveals our inner gold. Now then, I want to read the Sabian symbols, or these symbols for this. So the Sabian symbol for Aquarius 2, where Pluto stations direct, is an unexpected thunderstorm. James Burgess says, even though we want to cement our lives into secure structures, nature always wins in the end. This is about submission to unforeseen and uncontrollable forces. So, well, I don't think I need to read anymore. So I think, it's a bit worrying about hurricane season. There was also a big earthquake this morning as I record this. I think it was in Puerto Rico. No, maybe somewhere else. I haven't seen any news about it yet. It was a 7, so, but we'll see. These things don't always hit the news cycle right away, especially when I'm busy. But I also want to read you John Sandbacher's symbols. So for Aquarius 2, his omega symbol is an alchemist trying to capture a spirit in a forest. This degree is always looking for help in accomplishing whatever project in which it is currently involved, and seeks especially to enlist the support of natural forces. That doesn't just mean nature, by the way, that's the force. Okay, which is this kind of energy that we have lost our connection with. The force, just see it, think of it as the force. It understands that those forces are at work everywhere, including in each and every one of us, and so it calls out the pure and natural energies of its fellow humans to work with them in the process of evolutionary change. About freaking time, right? Anyway, the Chandra symbol for this degree is a woman strolling in a garden. She is unaware that she is being watched by elves. That's got that connection with the unseen forces as well, right? The power of nature is all around us and within us. And even though we may not experience it directly, we have the potential of tuning into it psychically and deriving immense knowledge and support from it. This degree is aware of the elusive nature of the forces that come together to create our world. It is seeking to contact those forces, but knows instinctively that to do so will take patience and will require a gentle melding with those energies. By letting go of desires and agendas, one can find the whole world ready and waiting to assist your spiritual growth. Now, this is going to keep unfolding like everything else. We're leaving the eclipse portal, but those, as Pluto gains speed and starts to move forward in Pluto, this is going to start unfolding. So I'm going to go, that's all on October the 13th. Let me go to October the 14th. But I do just want to read you his other symbols because I think this Pluto station direct is so potent, especially as we start to move into the period where all of this emergence and expansion of our consciousness is opening to us. I think it's worth the focus. He says the omega symbol, which was the alchemist trying to capture a spirit in a forest, shows the more aggressive side of the degree, but alludes to the truth that even when this attempt to capture knowledge is overt, it still requires inspiration and openness to the possibilities of the moment. And he says as well his Pleiadian symbol, which is he's rewritten Sabian, from a blue sky, a torrent of rain suddenly begins to fall. And the Azoth symbol, which is kind of the very root of things. Waking in the night, a person realizes a solution to a problem. Things are gonna, more and more people are gonna wake up, and more people are gonna start to find these, or have the answers are going to reveal themselves in all areas of life. October the 14th, Pallas Athena, still at 6 degrees, still on the south node of the USA, will sextile Ceres, asking if we are meeting our needs and the needs of everything else. No, we're not, clearly, but how can we strategize to do so? And Venus over here will finish her, will perfect this air grand trine over this 14th, 15th, and think of a kite flying, winds of change, big ways. Okay. Pluto. Oh, remember, by the way, Pluto's out of bounds when it's stationed direct. So, and Ceres as well will square off to Hygeia, saying, how can we prevent this happening again? How can we bring holistic health? And Venus will then trine Pluto late on the 14th, so I'm not going to go into that. But Venus and Pluto, they're kind of like the heart and soul. And Venus, early on the 15th, will trine Sedna. It's all really happening together, so let's move on. And then on to later on the 15th, Hecate is the final one of these kind of lesser, well, they're not lesser at all, but these goddess energies that have been working their magic in Scorpio, joins Vesta and Juno in Sagittarius, the sign of truth, justice, and freedom. And Neptune at the same time. Then on to October the 16th. Yeah, October the 16th, Neptune and Hecate will speak to each other in this fire. This is visionary fire. Okay, crossroads. What do we need to have faith in but faith in ourselves, each of us? On to the 17th, no other major aspects on the 16th, but I did forget to mention that the moon was in Cancer for a couple of days. Now the moon's in Virgo for a couple of days. But the sun over here, I missed the last quarter moon, but you'll get that on the weekly reports. On the 17th, the sun, still in Libra, will square off to Jupiter. And this is big expansion of our fight for justice and peace and harmony and equity, in my opinion. Later this day, Venus over here will then, is still in Libra, will start to aspect these other goddesses. So sacred contracts, Venus is now saying, let's fight for justice. Files could come out this month, you know. If we can get this woman confirmed by the stupid Speaker of the House, that is. I'm not holding back anymore. Later on October the 17th, the Sun repeats what Mercury did earlier and opposes Chiron and Eris, saying, come on, buckle up, shine the light on what tables we can turn to fight for these outsiders and to fight for justice and each other. It's just, I'm just like, oh, it's all coming together. It's just how it feels to me. Then Hecate opposes Uranus. What do we need to do differently? What radical change do we need to make? And Mars over here will square off to Chariclo, that spinner of grace, who is just holding space for us, for the people to rise up, to come together and to create a strategy. And October the 18th, the Sun will finish opposing Eris, the table shaker. But Mars over here will aspect the nodes. Mars is moving towards the North Node now and saying, what do we need to finish purging and letting go of and start taking action on? But at the same time, that's the 18th, right? Yeah. Then Venus will oppose Ceres. Okay. Ceres is moving quite fast through her retrograde now, Venus will come up to oppose Ceres. Venus will oppose Ceres at 6 Libra Aries. And should I mention that that means that Venus will come up to trine Pallas Athena. But Pallas Athena has now left the building of the South Node of the USA, saying, kind of let go of the past in some ways, let go of how this vision of, the USA being this perfect shining hill on the sea, or whatever you want to say, and strategize for how we're going to change things to make things better. Doesn't say it was all terrible, although some things were, but how can we all come together to create something that works for everybody? I've talked about that for a long time. Here it is again. Mercury will square off to Chariclo as well late on the 18th. So, she's still holding space for us to write this new story. It's still going to take a while. On the 19th, Mercury is catching up to Mars, and Mercury, before conjuncting Mars, will trine that North Node and also start moving towards it. Here we're combining kind of words and action to move towards this interconnectedness. At the same time, Hecate comes up and sextiles Pluto. The way forward is by purging our collective shadow and finding our deepest sense of empowerment and inner gold. Then later on the 19th, Venus over here will square off to Hygeia, preventative health, and trine Pallas Athena. So it's time to start co-creating this strategy of preventative health. Mars late on the 19th over here, and still before the conjunction of Mercury and Mars, will trine off to Centaur Nessus, revealing those abuses of power. And early on the 20th, Mercury will trine Nessus too. So a lot more is going to come to light, I think. Could be the files. And truths are coming out. Truth is coming out in a big way. At the same time, though, just a short time after Mercury exactly trines Nessus, Hecate, goddess of the crossroads in the sign of justice and truth, opposes Sedna and says, we're at this crisis point. If we don't do something now and come together and talk to each other and reveal the truth and fight for truth, then we're screwed. And Mercury and Mars come together at 2:51 a.m. on the 20th Eastern, and that is at 19 degrees. I'll probably look at symbols for that on the weekly report, but that's really combining mind and action. Okay, potent energy. Later on the 20th, Juno over here aspect Ceres, not going to go into that one, to be quite honest. Mercury will then square, talk to the hand, asteroid Lilith, and so will Mars on the 20th. We're not going back. That phrase, I've just been I'm listening to Kamala Harris's book. We are not going back. All this says we are not going back. Venus square Pholus from Libra brings some fight for fairness, equity, and justice because of what has been revealed. Now on to the 21st. And we have the new moon. Okay, let me actually get that one exact. So we get the moon conjunct the sun on October the 21st at 28 degrees Libra 21. And that is very close to the first Venus star point. That was on October the 22nd, 2022. It's kind of activating that, but because it's a new moon at another end degree, late degree, it also suggests endings and beginnings, endings and beginnings. I'm not going to go into the whole new moon at this point because I will do a video, but I will mention that it's still square to Jupiter pretty much, and not making major aspects to much else. Anyway, still opposing Eris and Chiron. The moon will then immediately move into Scorpio for a couple of days as we start the next lunar cycle. The nodes are now well off the 18-degree mark, but Vesta, the hearth of the state, and also our own focus, commitment, and devotion to truth and justice will square the nodes. And I will just like to say that this is on Donald Trump's nodes. Uranus, actually. It's opposing his Uranus. Just saying. I don't really want to say any more about that. I'll probably say it with Kathy though. So on the 22nd, Neptune moves back into Pisces, another beginning of the end. Neptune will not move off this 29-degree mark the whole time. Will move back into Aries early next year, and then we'll meet Saturn at 0 Aries. Much more on that later. But Neptune moves into the sign it is the modern guide for. This is cleaning out, purging, revealing, surrendering, more of these things. Have faith that this is all coming down the tubes. And the sun over here at 29 Libra will quincunx at Neptune, an aspect of adjustment in the sign of fairness, equity, justice. Then at 11:50 p.m. Eastern on the 22nd, the sun enters Scorpio and we officially enter witchy season. My kids it's Halloween every day in their house, but so we have witchy season starting. On the 23rd, the sun over here will make an aspect of adjustment to Uranus and Sedna, but also makes another one out of sign just to Neptune. Finger of fate, finger of God, pointing at the sun in Scorpio. This is stepping into your root power in huge ways and adjusting. Jupiter on the 23rd in Cancer will square off to Chiron. Talked a lot about that, but this is about expansion of what's been coming up all months. On the 24th, the moon will move into the sign of Sagittarius for a couple of days. But the major aspects of Vesta, after squaring the nodes, will square off to Nessus, abuses of power. And this is always a turning point. Square the nodes, square to Nessus. Vesta is the state, but it's also our focus, commitment, devotion to truth, justice, and natural law, I would add. On the 24th as well, the sun approaching Haumea will square off to Pluto. This is another closing cycle. This is another releasing of, but it's also another releasing of purging, but also stepping into your empowerment and your inner gold. 25th, near the end. Then we'll do the cards. The 25th, the sun will exactly conjunct Haumea, which is regeneration, okay, in Scorpio, which is the most fecund and fertile sign. Incidentally, I think this is on the star point of the USA, the Venus star point, where the sun and Venus were conjunct before the USA was born. So we're approaching that VSP, Venus star point return. The sun is conjunct that degree, but is also quincunx the latest Venus star point degree. All these things are, I keep saying timelines are just converging. It's almost hard to express, but I do believe that these next few months are really kind of just everything's going to fall apart for the oligarchy. I do. Mercury will be trine Saturn. Saturn has moved now back to 26 Pisces, so not exactly square the galactic center anymore, but Mercury, from what's being revealed, will trine Saturn and try and start to say, get that spine, start to take aligned action, let go of any self-limiting beliefs that you can't do this. Okay, on to the 26th. We're nearly there. No major aspects that day, but the moon will finish up its journey in Sagittarius and enter Capricorn for a couple of days. So on to the 27th, and Chariklo will station direct at 8:51 p.m. at 17 degrees 34 this point, and all of these energies in the sign of hopes and wishes for the future. But also, I always think of this sign as the most kind of sign of frequencies, of us realizing that everything is energy and frequency and coherence, and plasma and all those things with the two waves going together. This is not water. Okay, all of these are now going to move direct, and this is really going to change things. All four of these energies station direct this month. Amazing. And as Chariklo starts to station direct, Vesta over here will sextile, talk to the hand Lilith, focus, commitment, devotion to saying no. And then Ceres over here will trine Hecate, which is in there. Ceres, if you remember, well, in the story of Demeter Persephone, Hecate actually helped Demeter to find Persephone. And so this is in fire signs. This is about stepping into searching for this truth and reunification in many ways, each of us individually. In fire, it's very passionate, devoted to truth. All those things, again, astounding. Then later on the 27th, Pallas Athena over here will sextile Juno. Fire and air, but this is all the feminine energy, but also the kind of social justice kind of energy, or justice kind of energy, strategic justice, fighting together. They're all speaking together for the rise of the divine feminine in many ways, but within us all. Then Venus in Libra. See how fast she's going through her own sign? Crazy. Venus in Libra will trine Chariklo, as Chariklo is stationed direct. Space holder for healing. Venus is saying, let's create equity, balance, harmony for all in this world. 28th. I don't think there's many major aspects, so I'm just going to say the moon finishes up in Capricorn, and at 11:55 p.m. we'll move into Aquarius for a couple of days. Now then, I do want to get to the 29th. I'm actually just going to leave it at 8:25 a.m. Doesn't matter. Early in the morning, Mercury moves into Sagittarius at 7:02 a.m. Oh, my Mercury return. But before that, Mercury will trine Neptune, tuning into more interconnectedness, almost telepathic communication with what it is, but also into some more releasing and purging of old beliefs. And then Mercury moves into Sagittarius, the sign of higher connections with whatever it is, higher experiences of whatever the divine is, and truth and knowledge and justice. I think we're all going to start having this big, whatever I keep calling it, expansion of consciousness, but it's awareness. It's also, I don't think it's necessarily spiritual in the way of we've known it as spiritual, but it is spiritual because it's this realizing and understanding this interconnectedness. More and more of us will be understanding it. Then on October the 29th, late morning, Hygeia stations direct preventative holistic healing in the sign of the family, but also self-care, protection, basis of security. Then after that, Mars over here, heading towards the end of Scorpio, will also trine Saturn. That's a supportive, unbroken flow aspect, saying time to take action to build, rebuild what's being destroyed. And then lastly, on the 29th, Mercury will oppose Uranus and Sedna. It's going to be like kapow, kapow, kapow over the this month of realizations, understanding, truth coming to light, all of these things. October 30th, Venus will trine off to Pallas Athena. Oh, sorry, asteroid Lilith. I meant talk to the hand, the feminine. It's just kind of saying no, going back. And I do think some voices from the shadows will speak. It's the survivors, maybe, of the Epstein thing, because I don't think it was just Epstein at all. The sun in Scorpio will trine on Hygeia, preventative healing. Then Mercury will sextile Pluto, of course, because we'll run the gamut of all those slow-moving planets. But on to Halloween, the last of the month, and then we'll look at the cards. The moon finishes the month in Pisces. There may be some deep grief and sadness towards the end of the month, and I think that's reflected in the cards. There may be, a lot of empathy, a lot of, if you're not suffering yourself, which I hope and I know many people will not be, but they're feeling kind of some kind of collective grief and suffering, I think. So we finish on Halloween like that. So what day is that? A Friday. Ooh, on a Friday as well. So Halloween will be that day. If you're doing trick or treat, please be mindful and just be gentle with everybody and yourself. Later on October the 31st, the sun will square Pallas Athena at 8 degrees infinity strength. That's the strength card. There's several messages this month about you being asked to stand in your strength, even if it feels like you're being buffeted this month. And then the sun will also aspect Pholus. It's just being resilient and holding strength and knowing that if we band together, come together, we can be strong and resist this and end it. And then the last aspect, late at night, Venus will sextile Vesta, our inner flame. Not going to talk about that much. It's not an easy month, in my opinion. It's kind of a lot of fallout from things that have happened in, previous months and years, but things are beginning to end. And it's not easy, though, because it can be a little bit scary, that things might completely fall apart, all that kind of thing. Oh, actually, strength is 11 in this deck. They reverse in some decks, but this one is I am inner strength. This says, the red thread empowers and accompanies you as you walk the pathways of your life, and then onwards and beyond to your soul destiny. This blood red thread reminds you that you are strengthened through the use of your love, compassion, instinct, intuition, and knowing. The thread is only made weaker through violence, hatred, and aggression. Know that your life force holds great power and relentless strength. Wear a red thread to remind you of who you are. I was going to learn how to braid a bracelet, but I'm just going to cut a red thread. I think I need them. I really need to get that on me. Okay, the second card for the month is Icarus, the Tower card. Things are really going to start to fall apart. And of course, this will affect some people, but it won't affect everybody. Facing it with fear is not going to be helpful to you or anybody. Facing it with this sense of resilience and strength, and knowing that things are going to really start to fall apart, but you can only stay in your inner strength. Wear the red thread. But this is I am falling. There is only one kind of shock worse than the totally unexpected, the expected for which one has refused to prepare. Mary Renault. I don't know if there's any way really to prepare for what might happen. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but this is a wake-up call. You are forced to acknowledge a powerful resistance to change. So it's inevitable. Turning away from what needed to be acknowledged has now used force to make itself known. This is the people, I think, that are going to be most hurt. So the fall makes you aware of what you need to release and discard in your world. You may have fallen from dizzy heights, but in time you will stand again on solid, fertile ground, ready to build a new way forward. Know that you will survive this. This is a revelation illuminated by a dynamic eruption that was not what you might have expected. This is a breakthrough, an awakening, a shake-up, a transformation. Stay positive. This is the fall. And wear the red thread to remind you that you have everything in you that you need for this time, and you were born for this. 5 of discs. This is I am suffering. I do think you may be feeling a lot of grief and loss. Everybody, whether individually or collectively. So, but let me read you these quotes. Maya Angelou, my heroine. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. And from Martin Luther King Jr. We must accept finite disappointment, but we must never lose infinite hope. But I will say, do not project exactly how this is going to shake out for you or for the world. This nothing is set in stone about how things are going to shake out with this. The astrology says the Epstein files might be released, or we're going to find out more from them, or I think we have Virginia Gouffre's book coming out in October. Let me have a look at that, actually, because I do, I love to leave you on your with a positive note. You may not be impacted at all, other than from feeling what's happening in the world. Okay, so it's Nobody's Girl. It's coming out on October the 21st. Okay, so in fact, I'm going to buy it with my Audible credit now, so I get it on the day and download it. Now then, just to go back to October the 21st, because I have a feeling this could be something that really kind of opens up everything. So what's happening on October the 21st? It's a new moon at 28 degrees of Libra, and it's opposing Eris and Chiron. It's square to Jupiter. I meant to share the screen again. Wow, I can't believe her book's coming out on the new moon. Wow. Anyway, so look at this, the squares. But there's also, it's quincunx Saturn and Neptune. There's a finger of destiny, fate, pointing at this new moon. I will show you in a minute. It's also square Pluto. I'm going to show you all these aspects in a minute. It's also square Pallas Athena. So I'll just look at the major ones. So 28 degrees. It is, they're kind of out of sign, but these I'm still going to call quincunxes because it's endings and beginnings. So quincunx, and here we go. This is another finger of destiny. This month is another month full of destiny, full of energy shifts, energy changes. Her book is released on the new moon. You cannot make this up. And, well, maybe Kathy and I will look at some other aspects, but I think I mentioned already that this is conjunct the new Venus star point from back in 2022. I think this book release is actually going to be explosive. And she, if you're not aware, was the Epstein survivor. She survived for a long time, who was said to have been trafficked to Prince Andrew. We've already found out things about what's her name, who was Prince Andrew's wife, and they still live together and things like that. And the royal family don't know what to do with them right now. But it's, I think, this month. Wow, have to go and tell Cassie. I will see you. Love you.